Welcome to the Introducing Fast'n Go Hybrid Bandaging System webinar. My name is Hugh, Garnet Medical. I'm very excited to have brought Fast'n Go to Australia. I think this product is going to be a game changer for patients who need or want to be able to safely and effectively self-bandage at home. I think it's particularly important for patients that are in regional and rural areas that don't have access to a practitioner. Okay, so we have a very special guest for you all. His name is Pierre Gonon. He's the CEO and founder of Thonic Innovation. Pierre is the creator and inventor of Fast'n Go bandage. His credits include being the former managing director of SIGVARIS Britain. So this is a pure coincidence. For those of you who know Garnet Medical, we are also a distributor of SIGVARIS. Pierre was the founding member of the International Lymphoedema framework before launching his company in 2015. So if you have any questions about Fast'n Go, you'll probably get the answers from his presentation. We'll be delving into the science behind Fast'n Go. So I'd like to introduce him. Let's get Pierre highlighted here. Let's hope we. Alrighty. Hello, Pierre. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And you?
Very well, thanks, mate. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, and hello to everybody. Good afternoon for you, I think. We're still in the morning here in France. And thanks for the introduction, Hugh. I'm just going to go straight into the presentation. There will be 2 times in this presentation. The first one is PowerPoint, and because I believe it's sometimes very clear to it's clearer to see what people are talking about, and I believe in the power of images. And the second part will be more practical. As you will see, I have a pressure sensor here on my arm, and I will show you with a pressure sensor what happens with Fast'n Go. Okay, so without further ado, let's start with the presentation. What you have to know is that Fast'n Go has been designed from the beginning for self-bandaging and home care, and the reason is very simple. That's a bit about me, but I think you mentioned that, and that's about the mission statement of Thonic Innovation. The idea is to develop solutions that have a real impact, a positive impact on the treatment effectiveness, the organization of care, the cost of care, and the environmental impact of practices, but probably more importantly, the patient's daily life. Okay, the problem is very simple. If you look at the literature, and I'm highlighting here the best practice document from the ILF, which is you can download on their website. This is probably the best document you can find on bandaging. And in this document, and I'm not going to go in details through all of these initial statements, but you can realize that there is a fundamental problem with bandages, is that it takes specialist knowledge and skills to have a safe and effective application of compression bandages. And if you look at the reasons why, it's purely mechanical reasons, and I'm going to go through them quite quickly. As you said, if you have any questions, I'll be able to answer some today, and if you want to go into more details, I'll be happy to answer them at a later stage. Having a safe and effective application when the bandages are applied by trained people or skilled staff or specialist staff is not necessarily a problem, as we will see. But the big problem is that self-bandaging and home care do require safe and effective application, but the people who will apply these bandages do not have, by definition, the specialist knowledge and skills. If you look at compression therapy, you basically have 2 fundamental types of compression. What I would call the venous compression, where you will apply an elastic system or material on the limb to improve the venous flow by applying an external force. The other key component in compression therapy will be what we can call the lymphatic containment, which is the application of an inelastic component onto the limb so that being inelastic, the edema cannot grow. And as we will see, you can create peaks of pressure that will stimulate, or that will do a massaging effect that will move the limb. The thing about compression therapy, elastic, inelastic, but if you look and if you think, you can see that a bandage in itself doesn't have the force. I have here a very elastic bandage. If I want to apply 30 millimeters of mercury on my arm here, all I have to do is stretch it 80%, and I will deliver 30 millimeters of mercury here on my arm. If I want more, I can have more. If I want less, I can have less. So the bandage in itself doesn't have a force. Same for an inelastic bandage. If I apply it to the right stretch, which in this case would be 9% stretch, I would get my 30 millimeters of mercury. So really the first thing you have to understand about compression bandages, and it's confirmed by Laplace's law, is that the compression delivered to a patient is dictated by the hands of the person applying it, by changing the tension of the bandage or the number of layers. So the force, the compression is operator dependent, and that has been proven in many studies. I will only mention a couple of them. So the real question about bandaging is not what material should be used, it's who is going to apply it. And we will see one study done in Germany with home care practitioners in a while, and we can see the result. So if you can get the same compression level with an elastic material and an inelastic one, the question is why, or on what basis should I use this one or this one? Although you get the same pressure with the two here, you can see that the curve, or the stretch over force curve, with a very elastic material is almost flat. When with an inelastic one, it's almost vertical. And that is what will change everything. And the choice between elastic and inelastic will depend on your objective or your objectives with compression therapy, or the fundamental reason why you apply a bandage. So if your objective is the safe application, or in a way, the capacity to reach the dose of compression you want to achieve when you apply the bandage, it's quite obviously important, because if you look at the field of medicine, when you take a medicine, you have a very clear dose of active principle, whether it's paracetamol or whatever. You take 500 milligrams or 1,000 milligrams. You don't take something in between 500 or 1,000. In terms of compression, the safe application will depend on two factors, which are the reproducibilities, or the interoperator and the intraoperator reproducibilities. The interoperator is a capacity for two people to reach the same level of compression when applying the same system on this to the same support. And the intraoperator one is the capacity of the same person to reach the same level of compression when applying the system. So if we go back to our two possibilities here, you can see that if I'm applying an elastic material here, and I do respect exactly the 80%, I will get 30 millimeters of mercury here. But if I don't respect this stretch when applying the bandage, if I stretch it a little bit more or a little bit less than normally, the consequences in terms of millimeters are very, very minimal. If I stretch it 70%, I'm probably at 25 millimeters of mercury. If I stretch it 90, I'm at 35 millimeters of mercury, which in terms of compression levels are very, very similar. But if I have an inelastic layer, if I do not respect the exact stretch, theoretical stretch, then the consequences in terms of millimeters of mercury will be extremely high. If I only stretch it 10%, I go up probably to 60 millimeters of mercury, but if I stretch it at 8%, I'm down to maybe 10 millimeters of mercury. So the safe application or the capacity for the person applying the bandage to reach the required level of compression is going to be much easier the more elastic the bandage. Okay, but you also want an effective application. You want your bandage to be able to do something to the arm, and the effectiveness would be, especially in terms of chronic edema, lymphoedema, chronic edema, is the capacity to create peaks of pressure to mobilize the limb. And if you look at the same graph, it's quite easy to understand that this inelastic component or this inelastic bandage will be able to create much higher peaks of pressure when the patient is moving or is being mobilized. And that's all the interest of inelastic materials, because you will be able to create very high levels, high differences of compression when with a long stretch bandage, if the movement of a patient creates variations of a stretch of the bandage once applied of between 5 or 10%, then in millimeters of mercury, it makes virtually no difference. So for effectiveness, the more inelastic your bandage is, the more effective your system will be. But there's a second side to this coin. It also means that, and I don't need to remind you that one of the objectives of bandaging is to reduce the edema. If you have applied that bandage at 9% stretch, the inelastic one, and you start losing volume, which is your objective, then you will lose the effectiveness very quickly. And that's the downside of inelastic bandages. Whereas with elastic ones, if you reduce the edema, then the level of compression you still get will remain virtually the same. That's why there is a very, very simple conclusion. The ideal compression system should be at the same time as inelastic and as elastic as possible, depending whether you want to focus on effectiveness or safety of application. Obviously, the people from industry and the science have been thinking over the years, and the obvious answer is to go for something in between, to compromise between inelastic bandages and long stretch bandages with short stretch bandages. And it makes perfect sense, and I'm not going to list all the studies that prove that it's working extremely well, and that the application can be extremely safe when applied by specialists. And there is no question about it. But with short stretch bandages, the dose of a compression or the dosage of compression is still extremely difficult when you're not a specialist. I mentioned the study in Germany a few years ago where they asked home care practitioners, mostly nurses, to apply traditional short stretch bandages with a goal of reaching a level of compression between 50 and 60 millimeters of mercury. And they measured the values of compression these nurses were giving to their patients. Only 12% reached the goal of 50 to 60 millimeters of mercury. But the worst thing is that they measured pressures from 6 to 173 millimeters of mercury. So clearly 6 millimeters of mercury is very, very safe, but will not be effective. 173 millimeters of mercury is extremely high, especially because we're talking about resting pressure. So when the patients started moving, you had peaks of pressures probably around 200 to 150 millimeters of mercury, and you are entering the danger zone here. So short stretch bandages, no question about it, very good when and safe when applied by trained practitioners, not adapted for home care. So in the 80s, there was another development with multi-layer bandaging. And I think it's quite an interesting thing because if you look at a long stretch bandage, okay, this one is 150% stretch. If you fold it into 4, and you can do that test at home, if you fold it into 4 and you try to stretch it again, although each layer could be stretched 150%, the overall system cannot, the stretchability of a system is around 50% stretch, 50, 60% stretch. That means that when you apply multi-layer bandages, you can have a very effective and safe treatment, even when they have been applied by non-specialists. And here again, there are many studies that show that. The only problem is that the overall system is considered by self-bandaging patient as complicated and time-consuming, because when you need to apply, let's say 20, 30 rolls onto your leg, yes, you need the time to apply them, but you also need the time the day before to wind them up, all of them, and it's taking a lot of time. And the results are considered very often as bulky because you're applying so many layers. It's not so user-friendly, although it works very well and it can be very, very safe. More recently, we've seen the apparition of 2-layer kits, which somehow consist in mixing the two previous systems, where you have 2 layers of short stretch bandages applied on top of each other. I'm oversimplifying this presentation. Obviously, there would be much more to say about this system, but I have to explain just a general point. So in terms of effectiveness, I think there is no doubt that they can be very effective. And apparently the evidence says it's up to 7 days. And by definition, here again, the application is going to be easier than multi-layer bandages because you only have to apply 2 layers. The only problem with these systems is that they are disposable, and their cost and environmental impacts are very, very big. Just to illustrate this point, in France, our total expenditure for bandages over the last 8 years has more than tripled, has gone from 30 million euros to 90 million euros, just because the use of this disposable system. And the environmental impact has been huge, because in 2021, it has represented more than 600 tons of waste. So here again, very good system, makes perfect sense in a hospital environment, because you don't want cross-contamination. So using disposable systems in these conditions make perfect sense. But for the long-term management at home of a chronic disease, we can ask ourselves the question about what is the benefit here. Not to mention the patient's daily life or the recommendations of daily skincare. Because if you're going to wear your bandage for 7 days, it means you can't get a proper shower for 7 days. And obviously the daily skincare cannot be made. So if I had to summarize, all these systems have can be effective, can be safe when applied by the right people, and they do the job. but they are not adapted to the fundamental needs of self-managing and home care patients. Now, that's where the idea of hybrid technology comes. The idea is to build a system around the patient that will mix the efficiency of the inelastic bandages, the safety of the long stretch bandages, and add another layer, which will be the simplicity, because self-managing patients or home care practitioners need some systems that are simple to apply. So what we did with Fast'n Go is that we actually took the long stretch bandage I mentioned before and the inelastic one, and in our workshops we combine them by inserting the elastic one into the inelastic one, and I'm going to show you on the diagram. So this is the inelastic one. We insert the elastic one inside, we stretch it 30%, and then we make some seams every 10 centimeters. This is a Fast'n Go hybrid bandages. I don't know if you can see here, but you have seams every 10 centimeters. This means the overall system is a short stretch bandage, okay, because the maximum stretchability is 30%. So when I apply it, I apply a short stretch bandage, but it consists of an inelastic layer, and the elastic component will behave like a long stretch bandage. And I know it's a bit tricky here, but that's how it works, and it works very well, because we've got the benefits of both the inelastic and the long stretch without their inconveniences. To demonstrate the safe application of Fast'n Go, we did a study a few years ago where we compared the capacity to reach the same level of compression. We measured both the inter and the intraoperator reproducibility, but here I'm only talking about the intraoperator because somehow it's the most important for self-managing patient, saying, look, if people who have never applied a bandage before apply a traditional long stretch bandage, what is the reproducibility they can reach? And the perfect score here would be 0. And you can see that people who have never applied a bandage before got to a median of 8 millimeters of mercury, which is very good, especially if you compare it with the same long stretch bandage applied by trained staff. You have very similar levels of compression, of reproducibility. As expected, when we asked them to apply a traditional short stretch bandage, the specialists did extremely well. And I think that's quite interesting to see that with a more difficult system, they are actually doing better than with a long stretch bandage, because they have been trained and they practice daily. So they are capable of applying a short stretch bandage extremely safely, whereas people who had never applied a bandage before are struggling with traditional short stretch. And here again, from a technical point of view, it makes perfect sense. And then when both groups applied Fast'n Go, as you can see, we are back around 8 millimeters of mercury of reproducibility, which is the same level as the long stretch. Excuse me. This is the study we are doing. If we could do a live or in-person workshop, I can assure you that with the pressure sensor here, where I have it, I can already predict I'm going to apply myself later on 35 millimeters of mercury. I was at the ILF conference last week. I had many people who had never applied the Fast'n Go before applying it for the first time on myself. And believe it or not, they all were around 35 millimeters of mercury. So the reproducibility of the compression, the dose of the compression is very, very safe. And that's one of the main advantages of Fast'n Go. The effective application, just a few reminder of what the literature says. You want high stiffness and tolerable resting pressure to enhance patient adherence. And somehow with the all the traditional bandages, the conclusion was to say that if you want a working pressure between 60 and 90 millimeters of mercury, you needed some resting pressure between 40 and 60 millimeters of mercury. And for the arm, you want around 30 millimeters of mercury at rest. Now, I'm going to show you the image, but we will see it live later. If you measure what happens with Fast'n Go on an arm, you can see that not only do we start from a lower resting pressure than the literature is saying, therefore better for the patient's comfort and appliance, but with an arm, with this movement, we have no problem getting to working pressures of more than 100 millimeters of mercury with the arm movement. And if you just do a hand movement, you already go up to 60 millimeters of mercury. So we'll see that later. So no question about the effectiveness of Fast'n Go. We have an extremely high working pressure. And then we went to the simple application. So first of all, it's a single layer bandage. That means the application will be simple and quick. You don't have to apply or rewind and wash many layers. There's just one. Also, by definition, the patients will not have to worry about which bandage to apply first. There's just one to be applied, so it can't be simpler. Both sides are exactly the same. 100% cotton, so extremely comfortable. Actually, if you look at in details, this is our inelastic component is stockinette, nothing more. So the except if you have a patient with extremely sensitive skin, that element you use in bandaging is already included with Fast'n Go. And the patient can apply any side against the skin. It's going to be very comfortable and no problem. And because it's a single layer bandage, it's not going to be bulky. The right mix of elastic and inelastic materials. I mean, we could spend hours here again talking about that. But with traditional bandages, with multi-layer bandages, you need each time to rebuild this right mixed. And when trained practitioners have no problem with that, or specialist practitioners, it can be a challenge for self-managing on home care. Here, it has been done into our workshops. All we recommend is that the patients or the practitioner, before applying Fast'n Go, will wind it up under tension so that when you apply it, the right mix of elastic and inelastic is in the bandage, not in your hands anymore. Upper limb patients, by definition, just have one hand to apply a bandage. So traditionally, with traditional system, they will start like holding the bandage, which is not necessarily good for lymph circulation into the fingers. What we have created is an anchor point where people can start the application extremely easily and with their finger stretch. As I said, at this stage, we don't do anything for the fingers, so obviously make sure your patients have done what is necessary, self-bandaging or glove or toe cap, if we're talking about the leg, before they apply Fast'n Go. But the application is going to be extremely easy. We have an overlap indicator, so the recommended 50% overlap is made very easy when the patients apply the bandages. We have designed for the lower limb patients, we have designed a connector which will make it much easier to have a very simple continuum of application. So when you're finished with the first one, you connect it to the second one with this piece here. And the lower limb patients can have a very simple and safe application. And last but not least, we have developed a fastening system which is one of our development and one of our patents. It works on the same principle as Velcro, but it's a textile Velcro, which is elastic, and I'll show you later when I apply the bandage on my arm how easy it is to use. And last but not least, Fast'n Go is washable and reusable, so the cost efficiency and eco-friendly elements are there. What do patients and practitioners say? I'm not going to go through all of them, but I have to say that when a patient has tried a Fast'n Go bandage, it's extremely difficult for them to go back to any other system. It's not the perfect system. It's an additional tool in a toolbox, and we'll see that later. But the simplicity, the effectiveness makes it very good, and patients love it. A paradigm shifter. Many companies will tell you their product is a paradigm shifter. With Fast'n Go, we truly have a paradigm shifter, because when the literature tells us specialist knowledge and skill are required for safe and effective application, we can claim that Fast'n Go hybrid bandages do not require specialist knowledge and skills for safe and effective application. And on top of that, we have made it simple. What's in it for me? For all of you, clearly, the effectiveness. I can't imagine someone saying, I'm going to apply a bandage, but I don't care if it's effective or not. Effectiveness has to be for all of you. And we have it, and I'll show it to you more later on. If you're a self-bandaging patient, it's a daily life and empowerment that Fast'n Go will give you, which are the most important. Up until now, and that will be the next slide, people are requested to stay in their bandages 24, 48 hours, up to 7 days. It means they have to adapt their daily life to their bandaging routine. With Fast'n Go, as you will see, it takes less than a minute to self-bandage an arm, a couple of minutes to self-bandage a leg. That means you can adapt your bandaging to your daily life and not vice versa. And it will give patients the power to maybe, for some reasons that are theirs at a given time in their life or in their day, to do what they want to do, which is to have an extremely effective system on their arm or on their leg to fight that lymphoedema when they want to, especially when they exercise. If you're a carer, I mean the husband or wife or children of a patient with lymphoedema, the best thing about Fast'n Go for you is the safety and simplicity of application. That way, a husband or wife will be able to apply a bandage very safely, and then they might want to do it when with traditional systems, they might not want to do it for fear of doing something wrong. If you're a home care practitioner, same safety, making sure that you do not do something wrong is probably the biggest element or biggest advantage of Fast'n Go, but also the time. Applying a multi-layer bandaging system on a patient will take a home care practitioner or a practitioner will take 4 or 5 minutes, depending on the size, etc. Will take 4 or 5 minutes. If you can do it in a minute, and if you see 12 or 15 patients a day, at the end of the day, that's 1 hour. And that time is important for home care practitioners. And if you're a specialist practitioner, I don't think you will necessarily do better than what you're doing today with your current practice, but you will do it much quicker. And that time you're saving will give you is time that you will be able to spend focusing on your specialist skills on the same patients or allowing you to see more patients. And the hard time of bandaging is not added value from specialist practitioners. While with Fast'n Go, they can do as well, but faster. Okay. Now, just to finish this with this presentation, I strongly believe that with Fast'n Go, we are writing a page in the history of bandaging with sense and simplicity. Because if you look at the current practice here, and that's Professor Hugo Parch, who worked a lot on this here, we know that on average, when you have an edema, you have a pressure drop of 50% in 2 hours with a bandage. And as I said before, the worst things or the paradox is the more effective you are in reducing the edema, the faster you lose your effectiveness because you're reducing the edema, therefore you're reducing the pressure applied by the bandage. And that, from a clinical point of view, doesn't really make sense. I can understand why it has been like this, but in a way, I think, with Fast'n Go, we have the possibility to rethink bandaging practice and say for a patient, for example, I mean, I know each patient is different and has different daily lives, but a patient who would self-bandage in the morning, still in bed, self-bandage the arm or the leg, would prepare breakfast, will move around the house for whatever, half an hour, would benefit from the inelasticity of Fast'n Go to move a lot of length. Then you take it off, you take a shower, you go to work or to meet with friends, etc., and you wear your stocking or your arm sleeve, because I here again fully understand a patient who says, I don't want to be seen with my bandage in public. No question about that. That makes perfect sense. Then you spend your day with your arm sleeve or your stocking, and when you're back home, then maybe you'll exercise again with your Fast'n Go, moving a lot of lymph, if necessary, reapplying or readjusting the pressure so that each time you reapply a bandage or Fast'n Go, you start again from the maximum efficiency. And that's where I think it's time to rethink bandaging practices. Okay, these are my details, and for all questions, please also contact you, who will be answering some of them. And just wanted to finish on this quote, apparently from Leonardo da Vinci. I'm not sure if it's true, but I still love it, that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And with that, I can say that Fast'n Go is a very, very, very sophisticated bandage. Okay, that's it for me for the presentation bit. I don't know if you already have some questions.
Some of the more common questions we receive are how long does the Fast'n Go last? When does it need to be replaced?
Like a traditional garment, it clearly depends on how much you use it. If you're a very active patient and you use it every day and doing a lot of exercise, I would say probably you need to replace it after six months. If you use it a couple of hours a day, it can last a year or even more. So it's highly depends, but the minimum I would say is 6 months to a year. The average. The worst thing you can do, it's not using it doesn't damage it. It's the washing, and that can be damaging it. That's why we always say do not use any softener. You can wash it in a washing machine, 30, 40 degrees, no problem. But do not use any softener or do not wash it at 90 degrees, because that is what is going to damage it. But if you follow the instruction for you, 6 months to 1 year easily, and maybe less if you just use it a couple of times a week, it can probably last a few years.
Okay. Do you need to wash it after each application? Yeah.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I mean, here again, it's more common sense. That's so if you do a lot of exercise and if you sweat a lot, then yes. I mean, consider Fast'n Go bandage as a t-shirt. If you have sweated in it, you want to wash it. If you haven't sweated in it, maybe you can use it several times without washing it.
Right. I've got a question from Isabel. Thank you for your question, Isabel. What else is required for a complete bandage application? Do the patients still need a layer such as a stockinette underneath for skin protection?
So if you have very sensitive skin, yes, you can. If you do not have a sensitive skin, the outer layer is 100% cotton. So it will do the same as a stockinette. So it's here again, it depends on the patient, but most patients do not need anything underneath. And I'm going to anticipate the question maybe because probably the question of padding will come out sooner or later. So in terms of padding, I think you have to differentiate between the patients who really need padding in some areas, especially the retromalleolar area. Then yes, you can use Fast'n Go on these paddings, or you can use it on any padding. The issue or the problem with general padding of the arm or of the leg is that by definition, adding some padding will reduce the effectiveness. That's the part we are going to see now. When you apply Fast'n Go, the big benefit we have is that we apply the inelastic layer directly against the skin. If you put some padding in between, this padding will absorb some of the effectiveness. So if your patient really needs padding, then yes, it makes sense. If you're dealing with a patient that will have to keep Fast'n Go for any reasons for many hours, it can make sense to use some padding. But if it's just for exercising and getting the best out of it, it's better to use it without padding. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate the application on my arm now. And then I will share my screen to see the pressure sensor, okay? So, as I've said, and I'm showing on my arm, obviously, because it's much more convenient than the leg, but you can imagine what it is for the leg. So, starting with the arm, you have the anchor point, which you don't necessarily need for the leg because you have both hands to apply the bandage, okay? I've said that, and I'll repeat it again. Please make sure your patients have done what is necessary for the fingers or for the toes, because while we apply compression on the top of the hand or of the foot, we have to make sure the lymph doesn't go into the fingers. As you can see, I've applied 2 layers on top of my hand. That will depend on the edema on top of the hand or the foot. Maybe once is enough, or maybe you need a third one if you want more compression. So the more layers you put, the more compression you will get, but the longer the bandage you will require. And then the application is extremely simple with a 50% overlap. So you have a line here. You just follow it with the side of the bandage. What is very, very important is that, as you can see, I'm not applying it like this, okay? Because if you apply a bandage like this and you're not a specialist practitioner, it's extremely difficult to control the compression level. So really and that's the reason also why we ask you to roll up the bandage under tension, is that then you're able to apply it by just unwinding it onto the limb. With maximum tension here, I'm giving maximum tension, but still I'm controlling the level of compression. And I don't know if you will be able to see it very well, but if you don't stretch enough, you can see the cotton is not stretched completely. Well, okay, this is not a good application. This is a good application. So there's no folds into the cotton. and then I go over the pressure sensor. We advise patients to apply it like this. Obviously, as I've said, and will say many, many times, each patient is different. So maybe some of your patients will require a different application technique, a figure of 8, if you want the bandage to stay on. And it's absolutely no problem. You just have to think about the length of the bandage you need if you want to change the application technique. Okay, and then you reach the fastening system point here. Many patients, upper limb patients, will then struggle, because if the bandage finishes here, you can hold it like this, get your sticky tape, and then fasten it quite easily. But if it finishes here, it's more complicated. That's why we have developed the Fast'n Go fastening system here, which is here. And as you can see, I do not pull on it because I don't want to do a tourniquet effect, okay? And when I'm finished with the first time around, I will stretch it, and there you go. My arm, my bandage is fastened. For especially for active patients, the kits come with a fastening system with a second hook here, which then you only need to put here, and then your bandage cannot be removed, or by exercise. I mean, when you can do as much exercise as you want, and that's it. Less than a minute. If I need to wash my hands, what do? Just remove it, because I remove it, I wash my hands, and I reapply it. Takes me 1 minute, but I start again with the maximum efficiency. And that's where, when I say rethinking bandages, that's where I think it's important to realize is that the reapplication is one of the key elements of Fast'n Go. Now, the fastening system, I mentioned it, but it's easier for me to show now. As I say, it works on the same principle as Velcro, but it's 100% textile. This means that if I do like this, there's no plastic in it, 100% textile. It won't pull threads. It's not going to be damaging anything. So that's very user-friendly. It doesn't work if you do not stretch it. So to make it work, you need to stretch it, and then it will work. Okay. It will work both ways, so you can put the green on the white or the white on the green, so the patient don't have to worry about which side they're going to use it. And maybe more importantly, if the bandage has been applied by a practitioner or carer to someone with dexterity problem, obviously patients with dexterity problem can't self-bandage. But if a bandage has been applied to them by someone else and they need to remove it, you would obviously not use the second hook here, but it would still work very well. And you don't need absolutely no strength in the fingers to remove it. We have a very strong lateral force, but the peeling force is virtually nothing. So even patients with dexterity will be able to remove the bandage very, very easily. Now comes the part where I show you, I remind you, the pressure sensor is here. I have predicted a compression level of around 35 millimeters of mercury. And now I'm just connecting it to the pressure sensor, and I will share my screen with you. So that's
Pierre.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. I know it works on Zoom, but apparently it doesn't work on Teams.
I'll contact Bill Gates and I'll put in a complaint, and we'll sort it out.
If you want to go ahead with questions, I have a small film where you can see me doing what I was going to do. So it's I'll I'll put
We'll
it
send
on.
you the video evidence that
Yeah,
it works.
Yeah, the yeah, I'll just find the video and we'll show it to you. So if there are any questions, just let me know.
I've got some questions here. Does the bandage work for people who are obese or have irregular lower limb shapes? Are there any considerations with bandage for a better application, a single layer application bandage that's difficult for complex limb shapes?
So initially, Fast'n Go was more designed for the maintenance phase and to give the patients the possibility to have a very intensive phase whenever they want, etc. It will work on any patients, but you will need a specialist practitioner for this kind of patients because you need to adapt any bandage, including Fast'n Go, to the specific needs of these patients. So the answer is yes. It's not going to do miracles by no means, but yeah, you can use it on virtually on any patient.
All right. The second part of that, can it be used over night garments such as comfy wave or overnight? I think we've mentioned that already.
On perhaps it would be difficult on garments. I have quite a few patients who will use them on top of a garment, especially primary lower limb patients who do not want to remove their garments because they need to wear them all the time and will not just need a boost of working pressures, of peaks of pressure when they exercise, whether it's half an hour or 1 hour. So yeah, wearing it on top of a compression stocking is quite common.
Another question, do they come in one length? Can they be cut?
So they can't be cut. We have for the upper limb and below knee, we have 5 lengths, 3 to 5 meter. For the legs, we go from so you combine 2 rolls. So we go from lengths from 6.5 meter to 10 meter. If you have a patient who requires more, with the connector, you can add as many as you want. So yeah, that's it. If you want, I can, hopefully it will work, share the video. Can you see the video now on my screen?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So this is what you should be seeing live. With me, with my arms not moving, and you will see that I go up to a pressure of about 35 millimeters of mercury with a pressure sensor here. And you see it stabilizes, so it goes down to exactly 35 in this demonstration, 34. What is interesting is that it's never a flat line, as you can see. If I was wearing an arm sleeve, which is elastic, the line could be flat. With the inelastic component, it's always moving because you can see my heartbeat. I'm changing the scale here, so you can see what happens when I do this movement with my hand. Soft movement, and you can see that I reach pressures of already more than 60 millimeters of mercury. And that can be reproduced by anyone watching TV or doing just this simple movement with a hand, getting to working pressures of more than 30 millimeters of mercury added to the initial one. And when I do an arm movement, here again, not fast, not intense, I go up to more than 120 millimeters of mercury. That is what is moving the lymph. This is the pumping effect of an inelastic bandage. It's not exceptional. Specialist practitioners in their daily practice can do as well. No question about it. But what is exceptional with Fast'n Go is that anyone can reach very easily and safely this level of application. Sorry, I'm just going back to the last screen here. And what you can see here is with Fast'n Go. What I've done in this video is that I had applied an arm sleeve with a lower compression level initially, around 20 millimeters of mercury. And you can see that if I do the same exercises with an arm sleeve, I do have the same effect with a hand or with the arm movement, but it's much more limited because they are elastic and they have to be if you want to put them on. All of this to say that if your patients are going to do some exercise, it's better if they do their exercise with their stockings or arm sleeve, because you will get something here. But doing it with Fast'n Go is going to give a much, much higher pumping effect and massaging effect. Very simply, quickly, with a very simple and quick application. Okay, so that's, I'm sorry it didn't work live, but you would have seen the same.
Thanks, Pierre. We've got a couple more questions before we finish up because we're running out of time. Is there an anchor point for the lower limb bandage?
You could, because if you use it on the big toe, it allows you to come directly behind the heel or the retromalleolar area, and somehow you're optimizing the compression there. But not all patients will stand having the anchor point around the big toe. So we tend to say, no, don't use the anchor point for the lower limb. But I've said before, each patient is different, and the needs could be very, very different for each of them. So in general, you use a standard bandage for the lower limb.
Yeah, there's another question about how to work out the sizing. I'll send everyone the sizing chart and the measuring information. Is there anything in particular you need to consider when we're measuring for this product here?
Yeah, when you're measuring, think about the realities of the patient. The sizing chart has been done for a normal application on a normal patient. If you're going to use more because of the edema on the hand or on the foot, then you need a longer bandage than what is written on the sizing chart, because you're going to use more on the hand or on the foot. If there's no edema on the hand or on the foot, maybe the sizing chart is going to be a bit too long. So it's using the sizing chart and thinking of what the patient could do. If you need a figure of 8 around the elbow or the knee, then you need a longer bandage. Here again, that's using the sizing chart and thinking about the application. When in doubt, go for the longer one. Usually that works.
Okay, a couple of last quick questions. Is there a black option? No.
Not yet.
Pierre? Not yet.
Not yet.
And there's a question about the use of Fast'n Go for decongestion, which is great, and the cost is a deterrent. So I guess we need to consider when you're comparing it to existing bandage systems, right? 2-layer, short stretch. I mean, they're disposable. I mean, you're looking at how much would you pay for one application, between $30 to $60 each time. This is reusable Fast'n Go, right? And you have to consider, if you're bandaging somebody twice a week, over weeks or months, the costs can be extraordinary. You're looking at potentially thousands of dollars. While this is a one price, even if you need a couple of bandages and you're alternating between them, you're going to get a much more cost-effective treatment with this product.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
And
I always say, sorry to interrupt you, when patients are saying that, I always say, well, when you use your regular system, much of the time, multi-layer bandage, each time you're frustrated or you swear because this or that happened, put $1 in a box, and you will see that very quickly you will have enough for a Fast'n Go bandage.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Pierre, for the presentation. Very interesting, informative. Thank you, everyone, for joining. This presentation has been recorded, so I will send through a link for the recording for those of you who want to watch it again or have missed out. I hope everyone has a great evening. If you have any further questions, please send them through to us, and I can pass them on to Pierre if it's too curly for myself. And thank you so much again. Thanks, Pierre.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
See ya. Bye-bye.